Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to Earwax. I'm Colin, and today we're going to be doing a review of the brand new album from Sightseeing Crew, Let the Deadstock Breathe. Alright, so this is the brand new debut album from post-rock outfit Sightseeing Crew. This was actually a fan request review, so if you guys have an album that you want me to check out, let me know down in the comments. You can also sign up for my Patreon and guarantee a album request or any sort of video topic request. That is one of my tier rewards, is letting you request a topic, a video topic. I'm also going to start doing some exclusive live streams. I've got some giveaways coming out, so definitely go check it out. It definitely helps me out a lot. Also, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Like this video, all that good stuff. But yeah, so I was definitely excited to have someone reach out and wanting me to review this album. It is interesting, so first off, right off the bat, I have to say I'm not really the biggest fan of post-rock in general, just like as a genre. I saw Sigur Rós live once. It was a great experience, and I've definitely gotten stoned and I've jammed out to some Explosions in the Sky, but I've never actually been able to make it all the way through a full Godspeed You Black Emperor album. And overall, just as a genre, I do find it a little self-indulgent. Not to say that like post-rock bands or post-rock as a genre can't be good. And I think that, you know, there's some very talented musicians within that space. It's just not generally something that I choose to listen to. But, you know, I tried to be very objective with this album, and I definitely tried to go in with an open mind. And I did end up finding some parts that I enjoyed. Without further ado, let's get right into the track list. So this album, Let the Deadstock Breathe, opens up with a track called Tape. This is a fun way to start the album. You've got some, very like playful piano work right up front. Gets into some like off-tempo, offbeat drums and some sort of like spacey guitar work. This is one of the only songs that has any like sort of vocals on it, which I know that's a pretty standard thing in post-rock, is that's mostly an instrumental genre. But, you know, the vocals here, you can't really make out what they're saying. They're very airy, very breathy, very much like just kind of a background piece to add to the instrumentation of the song. Not super long, and there's definitely some moments, like some great moments of musicianship on this track. I can tell that the guys behind this album are talented musicians, even if I don't necessarily agree with some of the songwriting decisions on this album. But again, you know, take everything I say with a grain of salt, because I'm just not a post-rock guy. From there, it gets into Daybreak. Now, this also has some like very brief, kind of creepy vocal parts at the beginning of it. Not necessarily like singing or any sort of like lyrics, but there's definitely some like vocal harmonies going on. This is a fun track. This is one where, again, I kind of wish it wasn't so much a post-rock song, because there's some moments that I really do enjoy in this. I just wish it was like flushed out a little bit more. It does kind of go from like one chaotic moment to the next, and it's a fairly short track, at least in the grand scheme of things. I think it's like a minute and a half. From there, it gets into Your Cue. Now, this song, at least with like the first time I listened through it, I actually didn't know that we had moved on to a new song, because they sounded very similar when they kind of get going. But the beginning of this song is very chaotic, very like glitchy. There's some like breakbeat drums with like some off-putting sort of like offbeat synths going on. Honestly, like the first few minutes to me, just it feels like straight noise. There's very little like rhythm or any sort of direction to it whatsoever. By like minute 4, it calms down a little bit, and there are some like really brilliant parts, especially in like the guitar work and the drums. 3 songs in, I am really appreciating the drum work so far that I've experienced, but this song is, I think, a little bit too long, and it's a little bit too chaotic for my taste in certain parts. I don't think that, you know, again, that's necessarily a bad thing for some people. It's just not necessarily what I want to listen to on a daily basis. And then from there, we get into Licks. Now, this to me is the most disappointing song on the album. Not because it's bad, there's actually some really brilliant moments in this song. And I think if they had stripped it back just a little bit, I would have really enjoyed the vast majority of this. But like throughout this entire song, they're constantly putting in these really off-putting and like out of place just sounds and like bits that don't even really like make up a note. And again, I understand it's post-rock, experimental, it's supposed to be that way. Maybe if I still did drugs, this is something that I would really enjoy. But like the bass of the really, really well done like drums and bass and guitar, there's these random like dial-up tones and chimes and bells and sweeps and just I don't know. I feel like you can make a good post-rock song or a good song in general without throwing in every single sample that you have at your disposal. So like by the end, it's also just again, it's way too long of a song. By the end of it, I was very certain that I did not want to go back and listen to it again, even though I did listen to this album front to back 3 times to try and give it as fair a review as possible. And again, I think with Licks in particular, the reason I'm so disappointed in it is because I feel like it could have been such a good song. I understand I'm not the target demographic for this music, but like there were so many parts of this song that like were so good and that I wanted to be more front and center, and I felt like they were just ruined by the overproduction and like them trying to cram so much into it that it took me fully out of the experience and fully out of the immersion. From there, we go into Real, parentheses, Quickfire, Journal. Now, this is probably one of my favorite songs on the album. I actually really enjoyed this one. It's, again, still a little bit too short, but it's got some beautiful, beautiful guitar work. The drums are incredible. I, like, after the chaos that was Licks, coming into this, I was ready for pretty much anything, and I'm glad that it was a song that I could actually, like, kind of latch onto. And I think a good example of what I was just talking about in Licks, where it's still post-rock, it's still chaotic, there's still a lot of like, you know, randomness happening in the song structure and the melody, but it's done well, and there's no parts of the weirdness that is like taking away from the beautiful instrumentation in the background. I feel like had they stripped away and kind of gone the same direction they did with this song as in Licks, I would have ended up liking it a lot more. And this, you know, I think this is also a really good example of like using some more ambient background sounds that are not necessarily matching up perfectly with like the instrumentation, but doing it in a way that it doesn't like pull away from what you're listening to and like the experience that you're trying to have. Then it's Natural Works. This is similar to Licks, where I think there's just too much going on. It's still incredibly chaotic. There's so much just randomness thrown in. There are moments, again, that I do think are really, really good. Again, the guitar work is very well done. The drums are incredible. I really enjoyed the majority of the drums on this album. The piano at the end of this track, I think, is really good as well. But there's like more moments in this song than is necessary, where they're like messing around with effects and trying to get cute or weird, or like again, like the self-indulgenceness of post-rock, I think, is just bleeding through, especially in this track, where you're like, let's just try everything out and throw it at the wall, and yeah, it's gonna sound weird, and that's what makes it like edgy and cool. I can tell that like the guys behind this album are incredibly talented musicians. They just need to like pull it back a little bit, at least in my opinion, at like certain points, and have a little bit more direction going into like some of their songwriting. Obviously, I'm not expecting like traditional song structures, because again, this is a post-rock experimental album, post-rock experimental group, but there's moments of brilliance that you have to like pull from the chaos, and it's not necessarily like something I want to spend my time and energy doing. Which again ties into the next song, which is Grand ? Another shorter song on the album, but one that does feel cohesive. And again, even if it's not like traditional song structure, or if it's not, you know, like full on like, you know, melody, chorus, verse. Obviously, there's no like very few lyrics. I think there's like a brief vocal point at the beginning of the song. It still feels cohesive, and it feels like it has a direction, and it feels like it flows pretty well. Definitely still weird, still post-rocky, still experimental, still spacey and out there, but I do think this track is done very well, and I wish it was a little bit longer and they fleshed out some of the ideas on this a little bit more. There's some like swelling synths and very like dreamlike spacey guitars, and I do think it really complements the drums again very well. Again, I think the strongest points on this album come out when the drums are really like settling in and kind of keeping the entire sound grounded. And then there's like some playful bells at the end of it that do tie off the song really nicely. Then we get into Weary, the last track on the album. It is also, I think, the longest track on the album at like 9 minutes. By my third listen through this album, I didn't get all the way through this song. I was very weary after listening to it. I don't know. There's some like pushing the piano down the stairs kind of vibes I get right at the beginning. And it's the first like 4 or 5 minutes is just pure absolute noise and chaos. It sounds like the soundtrack to an art house slasher film where they're intentionally trying to make you uncomfortable while you're watching an uncomfortable scene, just without the uncomfortable scene to go with it. There's moments on this song that I do enjoy that have some good guitar work, good drums. But I gotta be honest, like I couldn't make it through this song a third time, and I have no desire to go back and listen to it again. Even like the brief moments that I do like it are kind of like ruined by what comes next. Specifically, like, and when I talk about the drums are my favorite part of this whole album, it's like the natural like drum kit drums. It feels like there's a lot of like 808s and like drum tracks on this song, which just again fully take me out of it. It's like the one thing I was really kind of holding on to. So I don't know. I mean, obviously, like I said at the beginning, I'm not a post-rock guy. I'm not the best person to judge or review a post-rock album. I did my best to go into this with an open mind. There are moments that I did really, really enjoy. There's a couple songs in particular that I'm definitely going to like listen to again. I just don't think I'm going to go through and listen to the full album front to back again. I think the guys behind this are very talented. And, I certainly, encourage you to go out and listen to it, especially if you're a post-rock person. I have friends that I respect a lot that are really into music that, look at me like I'm insane because I don't think Godspeed You Black Emperor or Sigur Rós are like two of the greatest bands on the planet. Which is weird because like I do enjoy experimental, abstract, ambient music, especially when it comes to like electronic music. I love like ambient electronic music. I like weirder stuff. I love psychedelic music. And post-rock, for whatever reason, has just been a genre I've never been able to get into. And this is certainly not the album that's going to do it for me. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't go check it out. I'm going to give this a C because it's not like terrible. I think there's some moments of brilliance on it. I think there's people out there that will certainly enjoy it. But as I've said, I'm just not one of them. So go check it out, guys. If you haven't listened to it, it's definitely worth giving a listen, especially if you are into post-rock. Let me know what you think down in the comments. If you checked it out, if you haven't, go listen to it. And as always, I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.